What does pledging allegiance really mean?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
It's more than just words. It's taking responsibility. It's getting involved in our democracy.
This is what democracy looks like.
I'm Allison Daskell-Hausman, and this is The Pledge. It's a podcast profiling people who have pledged to engage in our democracy.
And that whole idea of politics is dirty, yeah, but how do you think it got dirty? It got dirty because you left it over there in a corner and it collected dust and it rotted and it did whatever it wanted to.
Listen to The Pledge, be inspired, and get involved.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In our last episode, we met Elizabeth Rappaport Shannon, a woman whose awakening activism surprised even her, and it inspired me to do more. But she wasn't the only woman in Alabama who inspired me. There was also Stacie Propst. She is dogged in her activism. Through her, I've seen the elation and newfound optimism of progressives in the South, and a fighting spirit that isn't letting up despite Republican victories in the midterms. In today's episode, we're going to hear about Stacie's transformation. She grew up as an anti-feminist Republican, but that's not who she is anymore. Growing up in Alabama in the 60s and 70s, Stacie Propst fit right into her community. White, Christian, Republican. She belonged, but she wasn't comfortable.
So I was a Republican when I was growing up here, because that's what we were.
Stacie explains to me that it's not the label Republican that matters in Alabama. It's the expectation and pressure for all white people to be the same.
If you're not in line with everybody else, being ostracized here can be really hard.
Stacie remembers learning that as a kid.
There were two boys in my elementary school. One was Jewish and one's family was atheist. And those two boys were asked to step out of the room when we were still praying when we weren't supposed to be in our school. David, would you like to leave the room while the Christians pray? I mean, can you imagine? It was horrifying. I knew then as a, 8-year-old, this is so wrong. Look what they're doing to him. He didn't even have to be bullied by the kids. The teachers bullied him.
Stacie also remembers learning the proper role for women in her Bible study class.
I swear to goodness, it was all about how women need to serve the men. And that was what they were teaching us in junior high school.
Stacie didn't buy it, so she stopped going.
And the girls were like, what do you mean? Why don't you want to go? I said, are you actually going to allow them to teach you to be subservient to other, and I didn't use the word subservient, but, are you a servant to the men in your house? What are you talking about?
This sounds to me like the protest of a feminist, but Stacie assured me it wasn't.
So feminism was offensive in the world I grew up in. And if you had any quality about you, you didn't need feminism. Women were equal. Once again, you get sold this bill of goods.
But even if Stacie didn't consider herself a feminist, as she got older, she found it harder and harder to keep in line. At the University of Alabama, she joined a sorority, and that's when she really started to see what she calls the Alabama machine. When it came time to elect student government, she and her sisters were strongly encouraged to vote for the sorority's selected candidates.
This was a training ground for state politics. You would be fined if you did not vote.
The sorority would know if you didn't vote because after you voted, a hole was punched in the corner of your student ID. Stacie resisted.
This list right here, maybe I vote opposite of this list. And they're all looking up and going, what? And I knew, I was like, oh my God. We use the term sheep or whatever, but most human beings are followers, right? That machine worked for many, many years. There was no black person in office, and there was no woman ever in office. And that's a reminder to me that those women, even though I loved them dearly, didn't really care about standing up for what was right or pushing up against being told what to do.
And that's something that stuck with Stacie. She didn't want to be the kind of person who just followed. Stacie went on to graduate school at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. She earned her PhD in physiology and biophysics and lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for more than a decade. The more she was exposed to life outside of Alabama, and the farther she got from her childhood, Stacie realized that things could be different. They could be better.
And if I had been somehow, if I'd had this idyllic childhood, I would have been stuck in my little idyllic white world where I would have said, well, this is perfect. We should do this again. So in my world, it was not perfect, and we did not want to repeat that.
When Stacie finally returned to Alabama, she saw it more clearly.
We are the worst off economically here in the country. There was this saying here about thank God for Mississippi. I'm like, you cannot say that. Alabama has successfully dove deeper into our regressiveness. I mean, it's just out and out regressiveness, the whole thing.
According to a report of 12 states in the South by the Institute for Women's Policy Research, about 1 in every 5 women in Alabama lives in poverty, and not even a quarter have a bachelor's degree or higher. This is part of the reason why Alabama was ranked last in the nation for health and well-being. These statistics pissed Stacie off. She started strategizing with friends about how to elect candidates who would care about the same things she did.
If you don't have people in positions of influence, then what are you doing? And that whole idea of politics is dirty, yeah, but how do you think it got dirty? It got dirty because you left it over there in a corner and it collected dust and it rotted and it did whatever it wanted to. And you weren't paying attention. You weren't even voting. You weren't participating in the process.
About a year after Trump's election, Stacie was invited to a fundraiser for Emerge America, a national organization that's training Democratic women to run for office. Stacie was inspired, so she started working hard to raise the money needed to create an Alabama chapter. It was shockingly easy. Turns out a lot of Alabamians want to support progressive women candidates. Stacie became the first director of the newly founded Alabama chapter of Emerge.
I mean, I could die tomorrow, and just having done Emerge in this past year is worth doing it. I mean, because it's got to change, right? And if you get to do something that changes the world and this is changing the world, I know that. Not just my little world, the whole world.
Emerge is changing the world, and it's making history. The organization has trained more than 4,000 Democratic women to run for office since 2002, and it now has chapters in 25 states.
Alabama was the 20th affiliate, which when you're last in everything, to be the 20th affiliate, to be the 20th to come online is very exciting.
This year, there will be more than 900 Emerge alums holding elected office in local, state, and federal government. And while only one Emerge candidate won in the Alabama midterms, Stacie says she feels victorious.
I mean, we were successful. We created a lot of hope. We inspired not only ourselves, but men and women around the state. And we knocked doors. We had direct contact with the voters.
They trained 39 women, and now they know what they're up against in 2020.
What we learned through this election is that Democrats in Alabama will not win until we change some fundamental things about our electoral system.
Like how the state and National Democratic Party financially supports or doesn't support candidates. Stacie says they need to fight systemic problems head on.
These women did not lose because of the campaigns that they ran. They did not lose because they didn't have enough money. They did not lose because they were women even. They lost because Democrats have been gerrymandered out of existence.
Stacie says Emerge is committed to preparing different kinds of leaders who aren't part of the old boys club.
Emerge Alabama women are racially diverse, they are geographically diverse, they are diverse in age, they are diverse in religious background, in economic background.
She says the stakes are high.
I do know that right now, to save our democracy, you better put some people in office who care about that democracy. And that is these women that I'm talking to every day.
My name is Lori Feldman, and I'm the campaign manager for Laura K. Morrow.
Emerge women learn how to structure a campaign, get endorsements, fundraise, really everything you need to know to run successfully. And they're building a network. I met a group of inspiring Emerge women at a boot camp in Mobile.
I'm at Emerge because I want to help get women elected. But the thing that I am taking away most of all is this network of amazing women across the state who are going to be changing Alabama, and I am so proud to be amongst them.
So was I. I totally got the bug. I even ended up organizing people in Massachusetts to help Emerge Alabama alum Tabitha Eisner in her campaign for U.S. Congress. Before the midterms, we had a regular group that got together to make campaign calls and share some homemade soup every other week.
And so today, you guys are going to be calling Alabama.
I guess I'm now part of the sisterhood.
Men have support networks, have always had support networks with each other. They do each other favors, they help each other into positions, they pull each other into positions. We don't have that. We have been isolated in our own families, taking direction from men, and now we need to start directing ourselves.
And that is beginning to happen. Yes, there were disappointing midterm losses in Alabama. My candidate, Tabitha Eisner, didn't win. And the Republicans actually gained 5 seats in the State House. But the losses seem to have only stoked the fire. Stacie says since the election, more women have signed up with Emerge. They're already gearing up to run in 2020 to keep revolutionizing the ballot.
I don't want to talk about losing because there's no losing. We have already won. The ballot looks different. We have the first opportunity, we have the first slate of candidates that look like Alabamians and not like some throwback to Governor George Wallace's cabinet.
I was happy to hear Stacie's perspective because I was pretty bummed after the midterms. I think I went to Alabama a little naive, and it's clear to me now change won't come easily. But like Stacie, I believe it's worth the effort. We are finally emerging. And it makes sense to me that Stacie is helping lead the way. As a recovering anti-feminist, Stacie says she's both awed by the women stepping up and grateful to be on their side.
I mean, they're taking the risk. I'm the one who's sitting back and just doing the training.
And with that effort comes dreams of a different future.
Can you imagine how much better everything will be nationally if we can lift ourselves out of this basement that we're in?
It will be much better. This is just the beginning. This episode, in fact, a lot of this podcast, wouldn't have happened without Stacie. She was generous with her limited time, and she openly shared her story. She also connected me to a lot of other inspiring women who you'll meet in later episodes. Stacie helped me see how it's possible to drive change in Alabama. Thank you, Stacie. In the next episode, we meet Ani Williams. Ani chose to live in the poorest neighborhood in Birmingham, where she advocates for justice every day. She explains what motivates her to stay and fight.
You have to show people that they can create their own narrative, that their narrative doesn't have to be handed to them.
Thank you so much for listening to The Pledge. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And share it with all your friends. We're also looking for stories. Have you pledged to engage in your community? Do you have friends or relatives we should meet? Send a voice memo with your story to thepledgepodcast@gmail.com. And check out our Facebook page and website, thepledgepodcast.com. Until next time, stay strong and stick with your pledge.